Ladies and gentlemen, over the next few minutes, I'm going to present to you hard, factual data that would suggest that Donald Trump will win the 2024 election and may likely even win the national popular vote. So I've compiled a list of about 10 data points that I have found that point to Donald Trump winning the election, and I'm going to go through these with you guys in this video. So let's switch the scene here. And the first one is going to be how Trump is doing better than he was in 2020 and even 2016. So we can see here, this is the Real Clear Politics National Trump versus Harris average for the polls. And you see that Harris is currently +2. And the one reason I like Real Clear Politics or Real Clear Polling is that they have the This Day in History, which allows you to see where Clinton and Biden were at this point in history. So we can see that Harris is doing slightly worse than Clinton, 0.4 worse than Clinton was, and Biden was doing 7 points at this point. And it's important to note that Biden won the election by a little bit over 4, or the popular vote, I should say, by a little bit over 4, I believe, and Clinton won it by a little bit over 2. So at this point in history, the polling for Clinton was pretty accurate. But if I click on this here, you see that at the end of the election, Clinton was averaging 3.2, which is a whole 1.1 point higher than she actually ended up getting. And then, of course, the polling for Biden in 2020 at this point was 7, which is very much off from what he actually got. And it actually increased to 7.2. And he actually got 4.5 in the actual election results. And you'll see that by the end of the election, there was not a single point suggesting that Donald Trump would win in Biden's polling average. And if we go to Clinton, you'll see there was only one Trump poll, which surprisingly came from the LA Times. Every single other poll was showing a Clinton victory. Now, of course, both of those elections were very different than this election, but you'll see that we have 2 ties in the average, 2 Trump winning in the average, and then some outliers. We've got a +6 for Harris, which is probably a bit of an outlier. Probably this Trump +3 is a little bit of an outlier. But I will say, I'll go into this next. Atlas Intel is the most accurate pollster from 2020. So I will move on to that actually right now. So to sum this one up, this is the first point that Trump will win based on the averages and how they've been off. So if Harris gets a +2 national popular vote, that is a loss in the Electoral College. I'll see if I'll have to put that up in post, but I'll put the screenshot of Nate Silver's analysis of the popular vote and how it affects the Electoral College. But basically, a +2 national popular vote victory for Harris, as we saw with Clinton, who won by 2.1, that's a loss in the Electoral College for Democrats. So that right there is already a Trump victory. And then moving on to my next point, which is the polling error from Democrat pollsters. This is the 538 data on the average error of 2020 pollsters. And you can see here, like I said, Atlas Intel is the #1 pollster from 2020 with 2.2 error, an average of 2.2 error. And also, I will go on to point out that Rasmussen and Trafalgar are also, I believe, number 2 and 4, maybe 5, respectively, on this sheet. But 538 does not include them here. I guess Trafalgar is here. Yeah, 2.6 for Trafalgar, and Rasmussen 2.8. So those are, let's see, 2.2 Rasmussen, 2.8 Trafalgar. Yeah, so those are the top three, all of those. And we can see Rasmussen's poll right now is showing, it might be out of the Auge, yeah. So it's showing a +2 for Trump. Atlas Intel is +3. So that's the two of the top pollsters from 2020 are suggesting that Trump will win. And then the worst polling average for 2020 goes to Monmouth University, which 538 actually gives Monmouth number 5 on their list of best pollsters somehow. In 2020, they were just off the mark big time. And you can see I believe they've done some state polling, but I'm not exactly sure here. I won't go through that for you guys, but you guys can look into that for yourselves. But that just goes to show how 538, they've removed Trafalgar, they've removed Rasmussen. They list Monmouth University as one of their top 5 pollsters when they did so poorly in 2020. Additionally, YouGov, let's look at YouGov. YouGov is pretty bad. They had a 5.3 average error, which is on the bad side of things there. Marquette is also pretty poor. Let's look where Marquette is. They actually might not be on here. Yeah, I don't see them on here. ABC News. ABC News is down here, 5.5, also pretty bad. And then the New York Times Siena College. New York Times has actually put out some favorable polls for Trump recently, but they were off by 5.5 as well in 2020. So not super accurate with those polls there. And so that's one of the reasons why I don't really trust 538, just because they remove some of these pollsters that were very accurate, and they keep in and even highly rate their pollsters that were not accurate in 2020. And so that's another reason why I believe Trump will win in 2024, just based off how the polls are looking, and also the error. If you apply that error to the current polls, it gives Trump an even bigger victory than this one you see here in the Electoral College. And so moving on to the next point, we've got the national voter registration. This is a big one, and I didn't realize it was this bad for Democrats until I saw this post here from X. And you can see here that this is the voter registration changes from November 2020 to July of 2024. So just a few months ago, Democrats down 3.5 million voters compared to 2020. Republicans gained 393,000, and independents gained 1.8 million. So independents are the biggest gainer, but Democrats with a minus 3.5 million. The election in 2020 was decided by like less than 100,000 votes, probably. Like if Trump would have won Pennsylvania, which he lost, if we go to Pennsylvania, he lost by like 80,000, I believe. Yeah, it's like 80,000 votes. So less than 100,000, like 80 to 90,000 votes. And you're telling me that the Democrats are going to win when they lost 3.5 million? And let's just look at Pennsylvania. And this is from July. It's gotten even better for Republicans in Pennsylvania since this. The Democrats have lost 329,000 registrations. So they're down 329,000 voters, which is way larger than what they than what they won by in 2020. Republicans down only 1,466, so they're down, but independents are up. And let's look at how independents voted in the Pennsylvania election. Let's look at the exit polls here. Let's see if Pennsylvania does it. Yes, they do. And let's look at independents and see how they split. So independents went 52 to 44. So if you take that split and you look at this here, even if these independents split by, 4 points or so to Biden, that's not going to be enough to overcome the 329, or to Harris, I should say. That's not going to be enough to overcome the minus 329,000 voters that Democrats have lost. And it's even more than that. If I go to Scott Pressler here, who has been a huge force for Republicans in Pennsylvania trying to get voters to the polls. Let's see what his numbers are. Yep, so here's the numbers from Scott Pressler. Since 2020, Democrats are down over 300,000 voter registrations. They're down 300,000 mail-in ballot requests from where they were 4 years ago. The Republicans have also flipped Beaver County, Berks County, Bucks County, and Luzerne counties from blue to red. So that's 4 counties since 2020 that have flipped to red in raw voter registrations. So that is another huge blow to Democrats there, and another reason why I believe Trump will win, because Pennsylvania is so pivotal in this election. The next one I'm going to go over in the next point. This is point number 4, which is going to be third-party candidates. And the first main endorsement that Trump got from a third-party candidate was RFK Jr. And from Rich Barris, the People's Pundit, who puts out a great poll, another one of the best polls that 538 does not include in their model, I don't believe. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think they include it. He says that Trump is taking an initial 40% of RFK voters, and when RFK supports Trump, that increases to 6 out of 10. So 60% of RFK Jr. voters are going to be voting for Trump. And RFK Jr., even after Harris became the nominee, was polling around 5-6% sometimes. And I believe it might even be higher than that, just because, a lot of it went down after Biden went out, because a lot of voters switched to RFK because Biden was just so bad of a candidate, so old. And then so they went back to Harris after Harris became the nominee. But if Trump's getting 60% of RFK's 6% national popular vote, that's an over 3-point boost for Trump nationally, which is absolutely insane. And I know that 3% boost for Trump is a little bit of an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration according to these numbers, but I'm saying it's an exaggeration according to what will likely happen. So I don't think Trump's going to get an actually 3% boost from RFK Jr., but I do believe he will get a huge boost. This is another poll showing Trump getting 49% to Harris's 25%. And that's another thing. You might say, oh, Trump's getting, not even 50% of RFK Jr.'s vote. That's fine. But Harris is getting only a quarter. And so that means not most, but a good chunk, probably a quarter of RFK Jr. voters are just going to stay home. And so that's a quarter, 25% of RFK voters that will not vote for Harris. And so that's going to be a drag on Harris rather than a drag on Trump, because Trump's already getting such a huge support, plus 24 percentage points for Trump. And so that is actually big time. And so that's one huge endorsement. Of course, Trump also got the Tulsi Gabbard endorsement, which I don't think is really going to be as big, but she does have some supporters that'll definitely switch over to Trump now, I believe. And then another huge one is the Teamsters. This is the Teamsters official website of their presidential poll results. And you can see here that for Biden, before Biden's withdrawal from the race, the Teamsters polling data shows members backed Biden 44% to Trump's 36%. So that's an 8-point victory for Biden for the Teamsters. And then after Biden exited the race, Teamsters voted 59.6% compared to 34% for Harris. So that's Trump getting, again, 60%. So he's getting 60% of the Teamsters and possibly 60% of RFK voters. And that is huge because the Teamsters, if you look at their website, they have over 1.3 million members. And this is across many states. And I know some people will say, oh, but the Teamsters organizations and all of the swing states have supported Harris and endorsed Harris. But is that really going to make a difference? Because that's just the top people of those different localities that are saying that they endorse it. That doesn't necessarily reflect the actual opinions of the actual Teamsters down at the ground level. Because, again, this poll says 60%, and that isn't a substantial statistical statistic, So that's going to make an impact as well. The Teamsters have never chosen to endorse a candidate other than a Democrat, and this is the first year that they have decided not to endorse any candidate. And so they didn't endorse Trump, but regardless, in the last 50 plus years, they've always endorsed the Democrat, and they've always gone big time support for the Democrat in the actual election itself. So that is huge for Trump. So those three endorsements for Trump are other reasons why I believe he will win the election. And you can also bring up all the endorsements that Harris has gotten, Reagan people, Bush people, who is it? Who am I trying to think of? Romney, people like that have endorsed Harris. But I just don't think those people are going to give Republicans a reason to move over to the Harris camp. It's just not going to happen. Or maybe third party Republicans who are just not voting for Trump, just because they already aren't super likable. Especially Romney. Republicans just really don't like Romney that much, which I'm not really 100% sure why, but we'll see. But they just won't have as big of an effect as someone like RFK Jr. was when he was getting, he had points in the election where he was getting 15% of the national popular vote, which is substantial. So that's a huge reason why I believe Trump will win this election. Next, we have the Arab American Democrat mayor of the first Muslim-majority city in America, which is also in a swing state, Michigan. And Muslims, if you understand the demographics, Muslims overwhelmingly have supported Democrats recently. I believe 80% to less than 20. I could be a little bit wrong on that, so if I am, let me know in the comments. But that is huge for a guy in a Muslim-majority city to endorse Trump. And, it might not make a national impact, and in fact, it won't, but it could impact the state of Michigan, and especially this city. I don't think people realize how much of an impact this could have. So that's another big one. Not as big as like the Teamsters or, RFK Jr., of course, but still something to note. And then next, moving on to the Gallup poll. So let me go up to the top of this poll. This is the Gallup poll that they run every year, and it's got some very interesting data points that are very good at predicting the winners of an election. So the first part is the key measures of the 2024 presidential election environment. So these two top ones are the strongest predictors of who will win the election, and they both go to Republicans. So the first one is the party identification and leaning, which they have determined is 48 to 45%, giving Republicans a 3% lead in party identification, which is the first time in a very long time, possibly since they started doing this poll, that Republicans have had a lead. So you can see here, so since 1992, Republicans have never had a lead. They had a tie in 2004. So this is the first time they've had an outright lead since before 1992. And every election, this poll has been incredibly accurate at guessing the actual party electorate. And so the party better able to handle the most important problem is also Republicans by a 5-point margin. And we'll get into this, what the most important problem is, in this other one down here. The most important issues, according to the voters, is economy and immigration, which in almost every single poll, even the Democrat polls, has Trump leading in his handling of these issues, and who people want to handle those, would rather handle those issues going forward. And you can see that in 2024, Gallup's poll gives 46 to 41% of people on these issues. And if you also look here, this poll goes back to 1948. And if you look at who won the election compared to who won these polls, every single time this poll has been correct. This poll has never been wrong since 1948. And that is insane to think about. This is more accurate than, the 13 Keys by Alan Lichtman, which we'll talk about later. And you can see in 2020, -8. 2016, +4, Trump won. -10 for Obama. Obama won -7 here in 2008. 2004, Bush won. And it goes on and on and on. Every single one of these is completely accurate. And so this is predicting a Trump victory. And I think this is something that people should look at and say, like, wow, this is insane. Republicans leading in the party affiliation for the first time. Republicans winning in this Gallup poll on the issues that people care about the most. That's very significant. Which party is better able to keep the U.S. prosperous? Also, Republicans ahead by 6. So this Gallup poll is very interesting. Got a lot of good data here. And so that is another big reason why I believe Donald Trump will win. Next, we have the electoral or the early vote and mail-in data for a bunch of different swing states. We've got Pennsylvania first. You can see here that Pennsylvania early vote update as of today, September 27th. Compared to 2020, Republicans are up 1.4%. Democrats are up 0.5%. So it's a boost for both, but Democrats are down compared to 2022. Republicans are up big since 2022. And daily request average this week, 34%, which is trending up. And Democrats' 50% is trending down from historical average. So if you look at this picture here, you can see the trend is slightly down for Democrats, slightly up for Republicans. That, for early vote, this is very good. And regardless, it's good for Republicans because Republicans are trending up, Democrats are trending down. But especially for early vote, which the Republicans historically do very poorly at. And this is even better of an indicator, I believe, because it shows GOP requests as a percentage of Democrat requests. And you see this is going way up because the Republican requests are going up and Democrats are going down. You factor those in together and you get a huge boost for Republicans because the Republicans gain when they go up. The Republicans also gain when the Democrats go down. So that's an overall even larger gain than it might seem from the first sheet I showed you guys. And then if you normalize it as a percent of registered voters, you can see again, the Republicans are trending up, Democrats trending down. So this is some very good evidence that Republicans are making gains in Pennsylvania. Of course, whether this will be enough to swing the election is probably not going to be enough just from this data, but this again is early vote, and Republicans are historically very poor at early vote. And so if you see them making gains, that's a very good sign for Republicans and a very bad sign for Democrats. Moving on to the next state, we have North Carolina. And this is a very good, I like this graph because it really shows the impact that has been going on since 2020. And he says in 20 days, Republicans have gained 6 points net, and the trend is continuing to gain for Republicans every day. So if you look at this graph here, you can see I see my head is kind of cutting it off a little bit, but North Carolina Democrats underperformed 2020 and 2022 mail-in ballot requests as 2024 election nears. So Republicans have gained 2.8% in the number of ballot requests that have been made, and Democrats have lost 3.2% in the number of ballot requests as well. So that is a huge sign that Republicans are making gains in North Carolina as well. Now we move on to Virginia, yet another state where Democrats are doing worse than 2020, minus 1.3 compared to Republicans. And this Virginia trend is one of the biggest, most surprising trends you might see in all of these swing states. Many people wouldn't even consider Virginia to be a swing state, but I guarantee you it is. Because look at this, plus 7.7% for Republicans compared to 2020, compared to minus 1.3% for Democrats. That is huge. Biden won Virginia by like 10 points. If he is going down 9 points, that's a toss-up. That's literally a toss-up for Virginia, which is insane, absolutely insane to think about. Virginians overwhelmingly voted against Trump in 2020, and now they've turned on the Democrats. And again, just to make this point again, let's look at Virginia. Let's look at Virginia in the polls. Just the other day, +2 from Mary Washington, University of Mary Washington came out. We have a +3 that came out yesterday, I believe yesterday, in Virginia, of 1,144 likely voters. Oops, did not mean to click that. And Joe Biden won this state by 10, which is insane. That's a 7-point swing. If Virginia is swinging 7 points to the right, wouldn't you think that other states would also swing to the right? I saw a post the other day saying that Virginia and North Carolina almost always swing together. So if Virginia is swinging this much to the right, North Carolina is almost guaranteed to also swing a similar amount to the right. So that is very good news for Republicans in Virginia. Next, we have another poll about Virginia, or not a poll, but numbers for specifically Prince William County, which is a very Democrat county. It's in I guess you could consider it Northern Virginia, and this shows that compared to 2020 electoral vote, 2020 early vote comparison, on this day, this came out, earlier today, just a few hours ago, they're down 50% in the turnout for mail-in ballot requests, along with early vote turnout, because early vote has already started in Virginia. And for Democrat County to be down 50% in turnout is incredibly bad for Democrats compared to the state average, which is this county is down 19%. So this data analyst says worse than pathetic. Another reason why Trump will win this election. You've got all these states, and I could go on and on and on. I could go show you guys Nevada. I could show you guys Illinois even is seeing a downturn in Democrat turnout as well. Their early voting opened up yesterday, I believe, and it has been bad. So moving on, next is big cities trending to the right. You'll see this is a map of the trend from 2016 to 2020, and you'll see that most of these are all Democrat trends because the voters didn't like Trump's response to COVID. But let's look at some of these big cities. Let's look at New York. Look at this. Kings, New York, +7 for Trump compared to 2016. 8.7 boost for Trump in Queens. The Bronx went up 12. New York went up 3. Rockland went up 4.5. The other counties went up slightly for Biden. Now let's look at Chicago. Almost the entire state of Illinois went right. And you look at Chicago, Cook, Illinois, +3.4 for Trump. That is a big factor in considering how this trend will continue. And even California trended Republican, especially in LA, 5.2. So LA, Chicago, and New York all trended to the right from 2016 to 2020. And all signs are showing that Trump will do even better in urban areas as well this election. So that's another reason why I believe Trump will win this election. That's, not as strong of a point, I'll admit. It's not the strongest point to make, but it's something that is something we should consider. Next is the 13 keys. So this is my keys that I have. I have Trump winning with 6 keys false to 7 keys true. Of course, a true key is favorable to the incumbent party. A false key is favorable to the non-incumbent party. And the incumbent party needs 8 keys to be true. The non-incumbent party needs 6 to be false. And so you see here Trump has 6 false keys. And honestly, you could make a case that he has 9. So let's go through these midterm gains. Republicans did gain in the midterms, so that's just true. I mean, that's false. So, wow, it's kind of confusing when I say that. Republicans gained in the midterms, and so this key is false, meaning Republicans have an advantage. There was no primary contest. Unfortunately, there was not even an election for the Democrat candidate after Joe Biden got cooed out of his rightful passage as the Democrat nominee. So that is a true key. Next is the incumbent seeking re-election, which is false. Joe Biden is not seeking re-election. And then we've got no third party. And so I'm giving the Democrats here the benefit of the doubt by putting this as true. But honestly, RFK Jr. was polling, sometimes 15% nationally before Joe Biden dropped out. And so I know that support went down, but even if he's polling like 5%, polls even after Joe Biden dropped out, polls had him at 5%, 7%. I think some probably even had him at 9%. And that's statistically significant. No third party ever gets more than 2% really in an election nationally. It just doesn't happen. And so for him to get 5 to 9% of the national popular vote, that's significant. And so he dropped out. And so you might say, oh, he dropped out, so there's no third party. That is completely the wrong approach to take because he dropped out and endorsed Trump. That is like a candidate getting, 10% of the popular vote, 5 to 10% of the popular vote endorsing one of the main 2 candidates. That's going to make a huge impact. And so, honestly, you could put this as lean Trump and put it as false, and then Trump has 7. But I'm giving the Democrats the benefit of the doubt, putting that one in the Democrat column. And then strong short-term economy. This one I do have going for Trump, and I have evidence and facts to back it up. The strong short-term economy key is false. So the strong short-term economy key basically says, are you in a recession or not? True or false? And if you are in a recession, this key goes to the non-incumbent party, so it would be false, giving Trump the victory here. And I believe that we are in a recession, and here's why. This graph is 100% accurate in determining if you're in a recession or not. This is the 10-year Treasury constant maturity minus the 2-year Treasury constant maturity. And I'll put a really good video about this in the description below. I'll link it, about how this is so good at predicting if you're in a recession or not. But basically, you don't really need to know anything about how the bonds work, the 10 and the 2. You can watch the video if you want to learn about that. But every election, or not every election, every time this goes below zero, within less than 3 years, a recession begins. So these gray bars are where the recessions are. So you see this goes negative, and then the recession starts. It goes negative again, just a few years later, and the recession starts. Here it goes negative briefly, and the recession starts. We move it over. Here's another one. It goes negative, and the recession starts. It goes negative again briefly, recession starts. It went negative for COVID, very slightly, very briefly. Let's zoom in here. Here's COVID, yeah, negative. And then the COVID recession. And then you have today. This was 2022. It went negative in July of 2022. And it just went positive. And I believe because of this, it's gone negative, and now it's gone positive. And almost every single time, this has predicted it. So I believe we're very close to a recession, if not already in one. And so for that reason, I'm giving the short-term economy to Trump. And that's not even to mention the insanely high prices of things like groceries. You know, gas is going down, but it's still high, a lot higher than it was for Trump. Stuff like that. And so long-term economy, the real per capita economic growth, you know, I looked into this, and it's a little bit higher, but a lot of that is just because of this COVID boost. You know, recovering from COVID, we had a lot of economic growth because our economic growth was so bad that to get out of that, you know, it just boosted the economic growth. You can see like the economy was so bad, and then we got a huge boost, and then it stayed around 5%, 6% even, and then now it's kind of back to normal, 1.6% in quarter one 2024. And, you know, that is slightly better than it was, you know, in the last two presidential terms. So I'm giving that to Democrats. Major policy change is true. Biden did do a lot of major policy changes compared to Trump. There hasn't really been major social unrest, to be honest. If you're just being real, there hasn't. No scandal. You know, you could say the Biden being so old and having dementia is a little bit of a scandal, maybe even a lot of a scandal. You know, he dropped out of the election after a debate performance that was so bad that he was basically forced out by his own party. So that could also go to Trump. But I'm just giving the Democrats the benefit of the doubt here. So I'm putting that one as true for the Democrat column. No military or foreign failure. That's obviously false because of the failed pullout of Afghanistan, which was an absolute disaster and disgrace. The major foreign military success, completely false. You know, we've got Russia invading Ukraine. We've got the war in the Middle East. We've got the Afghanistan pullout. Literally almost every single foreign policy like event that's happened has been absolutely terrible for this administration. And then we've got charismatic incumbent. Completely false, of course. Biden is not charismatic at all. And uncharismatic challenger is, I'm going to say true just because the reasoning for this, you have to be someone that's like seen as a national hero to be considered false in this category. So I'm giving this one to the Democrats. But overall, this is Trump winning. And you could even give him, you know, maybe not the long-term economy. You know, best case scenario for Trump, he gets a 9. You know, you could give him, 8. You know, honestly, I would probably give the third party to him. And then, yeah, you could really give him 8. I'm not going to lie. Possibly even 9, but probably 8. I'd say 7, 8. 6, 7, 8 is like the sweet spot. But Trump is winning pretty much no matter how you look at it. I don't know how Alan Lichtman is getting a Harris victory from this. So that's the 13 keys for you. Next one is the non-swing states boosting Trump. If we go to the polls here, I've already showed you Virginia, which has had a huge swing to the right. But let's look at this. These are the swing states that Real Clear Politics has: Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. But let's look at the map here. Let's look at Minnesota here. Minnesota is a 4-point favorite for Harris right now. How much did Minnesota win by in 2020? Minnesota won by 7 points. We had a +3 come out from Rasmussen today, or yesterday. +3. That's a 4-point swing for Republicans. So we got a 4-point swing in Minnesota, a 6 to 7 point swing in Virginia. And let's keep going. Let's look at New Hampshire. We had a +4 poll come out here. There's an 8 and an 11, so this one's probably not going to be quite as big of a swing. New Hampshire went 7 points. So, if this poll is right, maybe it's a swing for Biden. But if this poll is right, it's a 3-point swing for Trump. And I have a tendency to think that compared to these other polls that are swinging in other states, that this is going to be a state that swings to the right. Let's keep going. Let's look at New York. New York has had a +13 and a +14 poll come out. You might say, oh, that's safe Democrat. Is it? I don't know. This state went +23 for Biden in 2020. That's a 10-point swing. A 10-point swing is absolutely massive. So let's go over this. 10-point swing, possible 3-point swing, 7-point swing, 3-point swing, and you're telling me that these states here are this much. Pennsylvania. You're telling me that Pennsylvania was a Biden +1 state and has had major Republican gains in voter registration and mail-in and early vote turnout. You're telling me that that's still going to go for Biden or Harris? I just don't believe it. They got Harris +0.4 here. I just don't believe that it's going to go for Harris. There's no way that these states are trending Democrat while New York is trending Republican by 10 points. Virginia is trending Republican by 7 points. Minnesota is trending Republican by 3 or 4 points. And you look at New Mexico. Biden won New Mexico by 10. Let's look at New Mexico. There's a 10-point. Okay, so New Mexico doesn't have a swing. But let's look at New Mexico in 538. Let's go here. 538 is actually a little more Republican in their polling average for New Mexico, I believe. 8.5 is their current average. We had a +5 poll come out the other day. This is from Likely Voters, 500 Likely Voters, +5 from Redfield and Wilton Strategies. And so you can say, oh, there's a +10 and a +8. And so, yeah, it cancels out. But still, that's a slightly more left. That's slightly more right, than it was in 2020. I don't believe that Harris is going to win by 10.8 or more. She's definitely not going to get more than what Biden got, for sure, guaranteed. And so I don't understand how people can say, oh, all these states are trending to the right. All these non-swing states are trending to the right. And yet all these actual swing states are trending left. It just doesn't work. You can't make that argument. Even Maryland. Maryland went 33 for Biden. And there was like a +23 poll that came out the other day. Let's look at Maryland. It's gotten a little more blue over the last couple polls. But look at this. 21 from Gonzalez Research. This was in August. And, the other ones have come up 31, 31, 32. So it's probably going to be more closer to what Biden got. But a +21 poll is insane if it's correct. I'm not saying it will be correct, but I'm saying that suggests that the Democrat support is going down even in these deep blue states. So, yeah, basically, I just don't believe these non-swing states are trending to the right and the swing states are trending to the left. It just doesn't make any sense from a national level. Like, if you look at the trend from 2020 to 2016, almost every single state trended blue. There was, 3, 4, 5, 6 states and D.C. trended to the right. And if you look at 2016 to 2012, almost every single state trended to the right. There was some that trended slightly, ever so slightly, +2, +1, +0.9, +1. Texas was the biggest one, +6.8. I guess Utah probably was +30. But that's just because there was the independent candidate there, so that kind of cancels out. And so, most of the trend is Republican. You go to the other election, almost every single state Republican, almost every single state Democrat. So, this one's probably the biggest indicator that it doesn't always happen, but it's very clear that almost every single election, the general shift is to one side or the other. It's not like, these states can go, half the states go left, half the states go right. It's generally in one direction or the other. And so that's why I just don't believe that the swing states will trend left and these other non-swing states are trending right. It just doesn't make sense. And so those are my about 10 different factors that I believe indicate that Donald Trump will win this election. So let's have some good productive dialogue in the comments below. If you disagree with my points, let me know, and I will be sure to look at those and consider those and either counter it, or maybe I'll even agree with it if you bring up a good enough point with good enough data. But yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Peace.